Well, here we are. Oh dear, walking along.
Firstly, I'd like to say, nice to be with you again.
And you. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a busy time. I've had a lot of work and you've been away. So, yeah, it's nice to come back and just have a conversation. And to be honest, secondly, I want to say, I have no idea what we're going to say.
I love that. What are you doing?
Just this annoying noise in my pocket. That's all right, there we go. Right, we're set. Yeah, so I don't have a clue what we're going to talk about, but it just felt like we're having a bit of a conversation about Matthew 18, and then we walked past a really nice house. We're walking in the countryside, having a morning of walking, because to be honest, it's been too long.
Too long. For you in particular, isn't it? Your job is just sitting down all the time.
Yeah, it's not been good on my back, to be honest. Standing up at the desk is okay, but walking, actual movement of walking is very good for me. And yeah, just got to watch it. The movement of this kind of gets the blood moving, and it made the symptoms die right down, which really was an eye-opener to me that I need to invest in time walking, which I actually really enjoy.
And especially when we can have conversations.
Yeah, I think there's a mirror into the first century in Yeshua continually walking along with his disciples teaching. And I think there's something in the movement of it that gets the blood flowing of the spiritual kind of insights. I think your brain almost has more blood flow when you're walking and when you're moving around than sitting in a room falling asleep.
Yeah, that's really... I think there's some science to that, but do you want to just start with what you were saying to me back there?
Yeah, I was just looking at all these houses, these very rich houses, and in a lovely area. And there was a permissible path that we were allowed to go on, allowing us to go through some land to connect to another path, which is very kind of them. And I just met one of the rich people here, walking their dogs, and very lovely lady, very polite, very tranquil, actually. There's some peace about them. And I was thinking, well, it's because, I don't know the backgrounds or whatever, but they rose up to the top of, who knows, I don't know. This life here is just brilliant, just idyllic. Or just, it's all we know where we are. Unfortunately, we're going to come down to a lane in a minute, so we won't be able to speak in this quietness anymore so much. But anyway, I just saw their houses and the tranquil nature of beautifully kept gardens, peace and quiet, overlooking a beautiful field. I was just like, it's just another life. But frankly, it's a wonderful life. It's the way that we were designed to live, I think.
This quiet, kind of tranquil. Some people would say otherwise. Some people would like the city. I mean, there's some people that like the city over the country.
Yeah, I kind of get that. And I'm parking that for a moment. Absolutely true. It's the world of commerce, the world of the police was back in the ancient Greek days when that began, was like a real... I think it's a good thing. It's the centre of the hive mind of humanity, I suppose, bringing ideas together. And it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, I think we need to remember that when we're talking into these things, we're not... It's best not to rush to criticise one system over another.
That's a really, really balanced way of seeing it. Yeah, absolutely.
And to know that there are downsides to both. Country life can become escapist, heavily fortified, rigid, separationist. It's all that kind of dynamic.
I get it, yeah. On the other side, the centre, which is what I tend to push back against, is the busyness. But it's almost drive, and that's not. That can be out of balance as well, can't it?
Yeah, I think that's what we're saying. But what came to your mind?
Within the framework of me talking about my 4% mortgage hike, which means I'm going to have to find a few £100 more a month out of the blue. You'd think only 4% is hardly anything, but when it ends up being quite a lot, and it actually has real implications for my life. But I I'm just thinking that these people, this is just me thinking in abstract terms, when I'm not labelling, I'm just saying, it seems like this is the top of the society where I just saw this picture of coming out of this noisy environment and reaching a place of stillness. I don't know, there's a sense of rising to the surface from a noisy world, and you pass a threshold at some point where you've got enough. And I think that's the whole idea of working life and retirement. So you accumulate, you've got enough to at last settle down into this state of coming out of the rat race, coming out of the noise, coming out of the striving to reach this place where you have enough resources at last to live, and then you're old and you die. It's just it seems a little bit like Solomon. It's meaningless, all of it, meaningless.
That's a real world example that you're experiencing there of those words.
Yeah, and I think within that, and there's so much in Ecclesiastes 8 that we could spend years on here, like just that chapter. And there's so many noticings of life, like I've just noticed, like that. Yeah, it ends up being it's meaningless. It's just meaningless. And that word meaningless is actually the word vanity, which actually is the name of Abel in Abel. It's Abel in Hebrew. Cain and Abel, the brother who was killed, the brother who bought the right thing, seemed to be accepted by God, and had jealousy turn on him and kill him by his brother Cain, who was appointed as this idea of he was seen as the kind of firstborn, almost the appointed. Maybe it's as the Bible often is, a commentary into that, saying, wait a minute, I mean, if you look at the Torah, it's continually turned on its head. That the firstborn, the thing that you think is going to save the day, that's going to take on the family inheritance, etc., is not the one. It's the underdog, it's the second, it's the Abel, it's the vanity, it's the breath. And I think that kind of links with Matthew 18 when we're talking about the child consciousness. It's one, a child in the ancient times, in the first century, it's not seen as a cute little thing that we see it today. It was a socially drained human being. Like there's no status. They're right at the bottom of the pile. And no one wanted to be a child. No one wanted to pay attention to the child, It was, let's work our way up this noisy tornado, upside down tornado, and try and get to the top. Get into the guilds and become something. I love the way Matthew 18 contrasts that, and I love the way that we can link Ecclesiastes here to the second choice. Solomon is reading these words, and all the stuff that we think is the first choice, the riches, what he's seeing, weirdly, is the cracks in the psychology of the first choice, you know what I mean?
Yes, so the cracks, just like in Cain, it seemed like, even though he was appointed Eve's first choice, there's this longing to return to what Adam had in the Garden of Eden. It goes all the way to Noah's flood, where actually the lineage of Cain turns into a violent, unjust city-state. And from there, maybe the perpetuation of only evil, only Ra, continually in the mind of man, completely like an epidemic on the earth, a pandemic on the earth of that had to be wiped out. Otherwise, it wouldn't last long.
Yeah. So this is the cracks we're talking about that I think Solomon is beginning to see into, and I just think, open the window of Matthew 18. Yeshua is commenting on the cracks he sees. And the rat race can paint a picture. The rat race can be a mirage that looks so inviting to climb up. But I think there's wisdom in recognizing that it's at these moments that when the cracks are seen in this mirage, the matrix starts to expose itself, especially when it starts to become unjust and access to justice is blocked. In Matthew 18 it talks about both. I think Law 17 it talks about the temple tax that had become an extortion mechanism, really far removed from its initiation in Exodus, in the Torah. Exodus 30, it was set up as a once only tax, and then in the days of Nehemiah, out of absolute emergency, they needed funding, so they instituted a third shekel temple tax, which got them out of a hole. But then these things just stick around, don't they? Once you get used to the new stream of income, the world adjusts around that, and then that became a half shekel temple tax in the days of the Romans, which was really, they were already taxed enough by the Romans, and now you've got a half shekel temple tax, and not just a half shekel that is just a half shekel of silver. No, it had to be a special coin that cost you a hell of a lot more than a half shekel of silver to get hold of. You know, it was really, really bad, really like bad. I'm saying it's almost like turning into the days of Noah, where Ra, remember, is not evil and pitchfork. Ra is a complete slipping away. If when we're talking about the days of Noah like that, it's a complete slipping away from God's ideals, God's idea of how life could be. Tov being the opposite. It's like bullseye. This is exactly what I want on the earth.
Yeah, it's always useful to go back to those two truths, because we can, and I don't care how many times we have to say it, because that reframes a hell of a lot when we comment on these things. You know, we're not saying evil, they're bad, and good, they're lovely. It's yeah, that's just what I wanted to chime in there with that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's exactly. I don't care how many times we say that and reiterate that Ra is not a pitchfork mentality, mental image. But yes, so really interesting that we're looking into all his vanity, and that linking back to Abel, the second choice, and seeing the cracks in the first choice. That there's something about the ego state of the first choice that really, I feel sorry for the first choice mentality. I feel sorry for the trust we put in our mechanisms, our society, our strength. And I think there's a gift given to Abel, to vanity, it's like breath, there's such a fragility to the idea of Abel.
I was just thinking fragility is another way of putting it. Somehow my mind went to Mount Sinai when God is heard, not in the storm, not in the big stuff, the earthquake, but in the still small voice. It's the thin voice is the Hebrew for that.
Yeah, I think that really does link. I don't know how, but thanks for sharing me that. But it does. I mean, that's the same concept, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it speaks into the idea that just as the ways of man that are first choice, the ladder up to the idyllic life, it makes sense to us, and it's very noisy, and we're told when we're younger, you've got to ascend, you've got to make it in this world. It's a very noisy voice. But listen for the quieter voice, and the quieter voice says, it's not done this way. And it's where the second choice is. And this is where I think Yeshua, when he brings the child into their midst and uses that as a metaphor to highlight the upside down kingdom that he was talking about, is profound. You know, he is amplifying that thin voice of God that we are drowning out constantly in our ascend to the top.
And I think that there's some wisdom in saying that when we, and I think Yeshua comments on that in Matthew 18. When we emulate that system, emulate that drive, emulate that mentality, that consciousness in our spiritual communities, when that leaks in, we are in danger, just as our society is in danger, just as the world of Noah was in danger, on the precipice of a cataclysmic overturn, just as Jerusalem was on the cliff edge of a cataclysmic downfall around 40 years later, and just as even we're looking at the comparison with Isaiah's time, with Isaiah 61 and the declaration of Jubilee, that culture was almost exactly, it could be overlaid on the experience of Yeshua's day in the first century, around 40 years till the Babylonian exile. And I would say that the same in our society. I wonder how long we've got, because the cracks are showing, and really, as we've seen when we've done the whole deep dive, as it were, into the financial system and the extortion, and we did another conversation on the inaccessibility to justice, and how the justice system is ultimately rigged against the poor, against the ones who need justice. And it's profound to see how it happened, how even legal language, and some experience of a friend of mine that was fighting in court, and it's just a losing battle. Yes, so all these, she represented herself, and it's a nightmare when you do that. But she couldn't afford to be represented either. Where do you stand there? Like, how do you deal with that? And it's the impossible situations that I saw this, and I was talking to you earlier, wasn't I, about my 4% rise. It's like it becomes unobtainable eventually.
And that's what we saw in the breakdown of the system. Eventually, it will collapse on itself because of this extortion, the current of extortion that is flowing in it. It's actually damaging the system. Yeah, and eventually the people will not to feed into the greed. And I think we were uncovering this again on another conversation in the woods in the morning, about how the greed, like there's this motif that we saw over and over again. I think we saw it in Proverbs. I was convinced it was in Proverbs.
Yeah, you were convincing me, like, come on, I've got this saying which actually came from Romans, didn't it?
Was it Romans?
Yeah, it was, I can't remember. Let's just have a little pause and think.
No, I think we found it in Timothy, not Romans.
Hang on. Oh yeah, 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. Yeah, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through many sorrows.
That's it. I was saying that the piercing themselves is where we're heading. And yeah, the motif is there in Proverbs and all over. We had a little exploration around more of the Bible and linking to similar sentences like this elsewhere. And it seems like, I said that it's like that sounds like losing the battle. And losing the battle against this incessant, unfulfilled greed, this love of money that is the root of all evil, this that turns into extortion, that then collapses on itself. And I was saying that's where we're heading. Yeah,
it reminds me of another verse in Ecclesiastes, and think whoever loves money, it kind of never has enough.
Yeah, that really speaks into the hopelessness of that condition, the love of money condition. And I think that's what we are really suffering from today. And it's not even, if you think of the idea of love, it's not love.
Oh, in the sense of...
Yeah, it's not eros, put it in Greek terms. It's this devotion to. It's this kind of like, it's the first use, I think, is in Genesis 22, when Abraham goes up to Mount Moriah and God says, the son whom you love. That's the first use of love, a father to his son, a devotion, a kind of nurturing, a walking with nurturing. That's a healthy kind of love, I think. But put that in an overlay with how people would see their money and how, really, sometimes sons and daughters are orphaned to this kind of misplaced love. But the parents are more interested in the nest egg than the child standing in front of them, and that's sad. But then put that on a global scale, and those who we should be nurturing, we are extracting from with extortion. Yeah, I think our love is misplaced. But I think love of money is a disease that needs zapping.
Yeah, and I think that's what speaks into the ultimate downfall of these empires. It cannot carry on like that because there's no opportunity to experience life as God designed us to experience life. And yeah, that's really, really interesting. And it's almost like it's got its own fail-safe switch built into a system that when it gets to a certain stage, it collapses. It doesn't have the extraction, actually has to come to a place of stop, and then the whole thing collapses.
Yeah, and there's a hope that will happen in a way, but also it's a lot of fallout, and it's very difficult, your dream with the tidal wave.
Yeah, I really feel, I'm just chatting now, I think we need to stop soon because we're almost at the car, but that we are going to see quite a fundamental collapse of what we know to be the system, because the system is built on this disease of love of money, this nest egg, and it causes a separationist mentality, and on the other side it causes a kind of a jealousy that becomes murderous.
Yeah, you're right. Murderous jealousy. It's but isn't that the bottom rising up and the top getting the just deserves?
Yeah, I think, well, I suppose I'm going to push back at this the same as you did earlier on with me.
Oh, and I see where we're going here.
Yeah, because you can't lump everyone all in the same. We're talking about a spiritual mechanism here. We're not pointing out people. There are wonderful people who are at the top of society, and there are wonderful people at the bottom of society, and this isn't an all or nothing reality. This is like a humanity experience, and sadly comes a time when the Ra overflows, and it's just in terms of, just think of Noah's time. There was a remnant. Just think of with Abraham seeing Sodom and Gomorrah, there was a remnant, but when that number is less than a certain amount, God does a reboot. And this is what I think, and it's weird because I think it's a perpetual, it's got its own momentum.
Yeah, when you start a machine or something, a flywheel or whatever, it has its own.
Yeah, it has its own kind of motion that is because of the physics in the thing going around. It takes ages for it to stop. So it's like, I think it's a runaway train almost, and people who do wake up to it and see the injustice of it, they realise they are caught in the trap and there's no way out, and they are going to collapse with it. And that's a sad scenario of when Israel fell. It didn't matter how many righteous there were, like the remnant were there and went into exile with the whole. And I think this is the moment when we see the interbeing becoming a reality, in the words of Al Gore. What did he say?
His film Inconvenient Truth?
Inconvenient, that's the word I'm looking for. It's really quite profound to kind of put it in terms of that. And it's also quite dark because to see the collapse of your society as an inconvenience to you is how it ends up being. It shows how dull the minds become. I think we need to wake up to the still small voice, the thin voice, to the second choice, and elevate that to the first choice and spend more attention on those things that are as world-shaking as bringing a child into the midst of your conversation and using that as a commentary on a different kingdom. Addressing the tax system, addressing the extortion system, addressing the justice system. Yeshua speaks into when 2 or 3 are gathered together. It was usually when 10, you had to gather 10 together. That's when you make a decision like a court. Let's just take it away from this unjust system and let's make justice accessible. And that can be done in our communities, and that can be done not with 10, but with 2 or 3. And then it's a great system. You bring it to the whole community. If the 1 or 2 can't really bring a matter to light in truth, then it needs to come to the whole community. And that's more than 10. But the dynamics are very different to a group of... It's very, very wise. It says bring them to the elders first and then to the whole community. And it's really, really wise. Let's uncover the truth. Let's uncover the injustice, uncover the thing that isn't right. Bring it to someone else, but let's bring it into the light, bring it into some maturity, and then let's bring it to the community. But I love the fact that the community is the last thing on the list, and even the elders. If you can sort it out at the lower levels, then that's the ideal. If people have a heart that is going to turn. But yeah, as it gets more complicated as well, it goes up higher, it gets wider, and maybe it becomes a communal discussion as to what do we do about this. Is this a situation that needs repenting from?
I think we're going off on that.
Yeah, we are. I'm just thinking aloud now into Matthew 18 about the practicalities of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we want to end it up, really, in the practical world, don't we? And we need help. We really need help because we've experienced community before, individually, in our own lives. We have had both stints of leading communities or being part of leadership, and it's difficult, isn't it, when the real life of it comes to the surface?
Yeah, especially when you're trying to navigate earning money, and these issues really take up a lot of your mental capacity, especially on shift work. For me, it's just I get disabled by that, and that's why I think elders are great, because they are free to a certain extent from they're wise, but they're also free. They've got time. They've got, and in my community, there's an elder he's just a great guy. He's been able to retire early, and he's just got wisdom, and he just has time for people. And actually, I'm sad to see that people don't go to him more. I mean, he's a great person to talk stuff out with, and he's got some great wisdom. Anyway, I think we need to stop there. We've just rambled on a bit, and it started with me seeing these houses. And let me just finish with this.
Go on, we haven't got long. Go on it.
All right, so when I was up there and I saw these houses and this idyllic life that seems to be the reward of the toil, the exit from the top. I'm thinking of that film, The Cube. The exit from the system of noise and frustration and...
The frantic system, the rat race, as you said.
Yeah, the rat race, that kind of energy. And I'm like, but maybe there's another way. Maybe this isn't the way that it was designed to be. Maybe it starts with this kind of life. Let's turn it on its head. And that started looking a lot like the mentality of Eden. You start with delight. And I think that can be wherever you are. I think if you notice those moments where you can have delight, like I do, and where I live, there's a small patch of woodland in the middle of the housing development I live in. And I can be in that place and enter into Eden, delight. That's what the Hebrew word means, delight. And I start from that place. And Shabbat, an oasis in time, where we can get to the start. And the start being a place of tranquility, a place of stillness, a place of idyllicness. Even if you're in circumstances that are difficult, there is a river whose streams of joy flow through the city of God Most High. And that's the words of a song from Psalm 46.
What a beautiful song. There is a river, yeah.
And that river is within us, that river that leads to Eden. It flows within us and it's accessible. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, who stands in the ways of sinners, but whose roots go down deep into the word of God and into the things of God. He's happy. Happy is the man. Asher is the first word in that psalm. It means happy. And I think that we need to understand by just take the picture of us walking past these idyllic kind of little country cottages that millionaires have been able to settle down in. Or maybe not. We don't know their lives. But take that as a picture of the same place that we can have. And let's get out of this rat race. Let's just not be in that mentality. And if we do need to interact with the rat race, let's start from Shabbat. You know, the whole motif that actually the seventh day of the week is the first day of the week. It's from which day one flows. And let's get Shabbat. Let's get Eden. Let's get our mentality. It's almost like you're coming from the future. Again, turn time on its head. You start from, and this is what I think it means when we dig down into the Torah, happy is the man, because what's he seeing there? The whole Torah, as we've explored it, and then scriptures explode from the roots of the Torah. It's talking about a kingdom that is coming, and we see that in Revelation. There is an idyllic kingdom. There is a utopia coming, and the Torah is commenting on that. And often the Torah is countering what we see in our common culture and saying, look, there's a still small voice underneath all of this. And as culture gets more and more corrupt, as extortion begins to affect people's lives in very real ways, as justice becomes inaccessible to those who need justice, this voice gets very loud. But it's a voice of hope. It's not just the voice of the booming prophet. He's speaking in a booming way. I think we were talking yesterday about prophecy, weren't we?
Yes, I think I was saying this, I can't remember that. Yeah, the voice of prophecy sometimes needs to be harsh, sometimes needs to be destructive, like we see in the prophets. I think we're coming against someone who said, whenever you prophesy, it needs to be building goods or something like that. And we are kind of pushing back against that. It's like, but sometimes it needs to be harsh, especially when it comes to leaders. And you see the prophetic voice that Yeshua used with the leaders of Jerusalem at the time. Yeah, his voice was pretty harsh, pretty abrasive, wasn't it?
Yeah, and yeah, so there we go. But don't hear through the abrasiveness into the hope. Listen to the place from which this prophecy is coming. And just like you were saying about prophecy with a child, like when you tell a child off, that the ferocity in that discipline, the noise, the sound level of the shout, almost like the trumpet at Yom Kippur, really, Yom Teruah, really waking you up. There's a kingdom coming, folks. Hello, you as my child, you are not going to act like that. That is not going to be my child from here on. You are going to become who I really see you could be, and I want you to be, because you're my child and I love you. And that's what we need to hear through when we hear the raised voice of the prophet that is abrasive to our ears.
And that's when the still small voice becomes very loud. And I think it speaks into the fact that Yeshua was speaking into a culture that didn't want to hear. They put fingers in their ears, just visualizing the altercation that Stephen had with the leaders, the chief priests, the Pharisees, before he was stoned to death. They put their fingers in their ears because the still small voice that was speaking prophetically into the corruption that they had allowed to happen, and then now the cages were completely built and people were in bondage to they didn't want to hear it. They put fingers in their ears. It's it's a visceral picture, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really profound, isn't it? But as you say, I think we need to stop. But we could go on, and this is great conversation. Actually, we'll stop recording, but let's continue on.
Yeah, oh, don't like doing that. We do need to stop the recording and start driving, and we can't really use these microphones. We need to pack them away. So, thanks for listening. Continue the conversation. I hope we sparked something.